Was staring at our family group chat on my cracked phone, thumb hovering over the screen, when my little sister typed, "Your real mom is just a dead woman who got replaced," and I didn't respond because something in me went cold and quiet, like my heart had decided to stop making noise. Why would someone say that about the same mother we share? And why did it feel like she'd been waiting for the perfect moment to twist the knife? My name is Serafina. I am 23, and I work the front desk at a dental office where I spend most days smiling at strangers and swallowing my real feelings like they're pills I'm supposed to take with water. If you met me in the waiting room, you'd probably think my life is normal, clean, organized, but grief doesn't care how tidy you look on the outside. Grief hides in the places people don't see, like the top drawer of my dresser, where I keep one photograph of my mother, the only one I have where her eyes look like they're laughing, and I can almost pretend she didn't leave. My mom died when I was a little kid, not in some dramatic movie way. It was the quiet kind of tragedy that happens in bright hospital hallways. One day she was there, and then she wasn't. The house didn't just lose a person, it lost a temperature. I was 7. My brothers, Rhodes and Grant, were older. They remember her voice better than I do. They remember the way she sang off key while making spaghetti, the way she rubbed Grant's back when he pretended he wasn't scared of storms. I remember pieces, a smell, warm laundry, her hand on my hair, and then there was Waverly. My younger sister was born 2 days before my mother died. She never met her, not in any real way. She doesn't have a memory to hold on to, so she built her life around a different woman. 4 years after my mom died, my dad started dating again. He looked like a man trying to learn how to breathe underwater. He tried so hard not to let us see him drowning, but kids can always tell. The woman he married, Holland, didn't come in like a villain. That's what makes this mess harder to explain. She wasn't cruel, she wasn't wicked. She was just there, steady, practical, the kind of woman who remembers dentist appointments and buys the right cereal and folds towels into neat rectangles. For Waverly, Holland was mom. She called her that before the wedding, before the rings, before the ink dried on any paperwork, and eventually it became official. Holland adopted her. That part always felt like a door closing in a house. I still lived in Dodd, Rhodes, and Grant, and I never called Holland mom. We never even came close. We were polite. We said thank you. We did our chores. We survived, but we didn't give her that title because it felt like taking something from a woman who never got to finish being our mother. Waverly never understood that. She didn't want to understand it. For years, she'd say little things that made my stomach twist, not always directly. Sometimes it was a sigh when we visited our mom's side of the family. Sometimes it was an eye roll when we lit a candle on mom's birthday. Sometimes it was the way she'd say, Holland did all the work anyway. Like love is a competition and grief is just bad manners. But recently, she'd gotten worse, sharper, meaner, like she'd discovered that cruelty can make people listen. A few months ago, Dad and Holland separated. No one announced it with a speech. It was more like the house started echoing again. Holland moved out for a while. Dad said they were figuring things out. Waverly started slamming doors, like she was trying to knock the whole world off its hinges. And suddenly, every time my brothers and I did anything related to our mom, Waverly took it like a personal attack. The first time it really exploded was Mother's Day. I had planned to drive out with my brothers to see my mom's sister, the aunt who still texts me pictures of my mom when she finds them in old albums. We always do that. It's never loud, never a party, just a way of saying you mattered and you still do. Waverly cornered me in the kitchen while I was packing a bag. She had that tight look in her face, like she'd already decided I was guilty. "So you're really going?" she said. "Yeah," I answered, keeping my voice calm. "Rhodes is picking me up." She stared at me like I'd just confessed something disgusting. "And what about Holland?" I blinked. "What about her?" Waverly's eyes flashed. "You could at least do something. She is the mom who actually raised us." I felt my throat tighten. That word us always felt slippery when it came from her mouth. "She raised you," I said quietly, "and I'm glad you have her, but that doesn't erase our mom." Waverly laughed, sharp and ugly. "Your mom is a ghost. Holland is real." My hands froze on the zipper of my bag. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw every memory I had like a weapon, but I didn't. I just looked at her and realized she wasn't arguing about Mother's Day. She was arguing about belonging. I said, "I'm not doing this with you," and I walked out of the kitchen before she could see that my eyes were wet. Later, Dad tried to talk to her. I heard his voice through the wall, firm, tired, the sound of a man holding a breaking thing together with his bare hands. It didn't change anything. Waverly still had that itch to scratch. She still wanted to say the worst thing, just to see if it would make the rest of us move the way she wanted. Then came the group chat message, the one that made my whole body go quiet. It was the week of our mom's birthday. We always do something small. Sometimes we drive out to the cemetery with flowers. Sometimes we meet our aunt for pie. Sometimes we just sit together and tell one story each, so her name stays alive in the air. Rhodes had sent a message first. Something simple. Same plan as usual. "Saturday morning, I'll bring the flowers," Grant replied with a heart emoji, which was the closest he ever got to being sentimental in public. I was about to type, "I'll bring the pie," when Waverly popped in like she'd been waiting. "What plan?" she wrote. Rhodes answered, "Mom's birthday." There was a pause long enough that I could see the little typing dots appear, disappear, then appear again, like she was rehearsing the cruelty before she delivered it. Then she wrote it, that line, the one that made my stomach drop, the one about my real mom being a dead woman who got replaced. I stared at the screen so long my eyes started to sting. My fingers didn't move. I didn't argue. I didn't correct her. I didn't defend. Because the truth is, in that moment, I realized something that hurt worse than her. Words. She didn't just not love my mom. She resented her. And maybe she always had. Rhodes finally responded, "Enough." Grant wrote, "Stop." Waverly answered like she was proud of herself. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Holland is the real mom. Your dead lady isn't special." That's when I set my phone down and walked into the bathroom at work, locked the stall, and cried silently with my hand over my mouth so no one could hear. The receptionist outside was laughing with a patient. The world kept spinning. My grief didn't matter to anyone but me. When I calmed down, I did something I'd never done before. I took screenshots. Every message, every word, not to expose her online, not to embarrass her, just to keep proof, because something in me knew this was going to get worse. And if it did, I wasn't going to be the one standing there empty-handed, trying to explain pain to people who wanted to pretend it was just teenage stuff. Saturday came. Rhodes picked me up early. It was cold outside, the kind of morning where the sky looks like metal. Grant met us at the cemetery. We brought flowers and pie, and that familiar heavy silence that always sat in the car with us. We didn't invite Waverly. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a boundary. I told myself I didn't feel guilty. I told myself I was protecting something sacred. I told myself that if she came, she would ruin it, and I wasn't strong enough to watch her do that again. We stood by the grave, and Rhodes placed the the flowers like he was laying down an apology he'd carried for years. Grant's jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might crack. I didn't say much. I just touched the stone with my fingertips and let myself feel the ache. When we left, my phone buzzed again. Waverly had posted on her social media story, a black screen with white text. They celebrate a dead stranger and leave me out like I'm not family. My chest tightened, not because she was hurt, but because she was rewriting the truth in public, making us look cruel without ever mentioning what she'd said. When we got back to Dad's house later, Waverly was waiting in the living room with her arms crossed and her eyes bright with rage. Dad stood behind her looking exhausted, like he'd been awake all night arguing with a teenager and losing every round. Waverly pointed at me first. You didn't even tell me. Rhodes said, you made it clear you didn't want to be part of it. I never said that, she snapped. I said Holland is my mom. That doesn't mean I don't get to be included. Grant's voice was low. You said mom being dead was no big deal. Waverly's face twisted. Because it isn't. It gave Dad a chance to find a real mom for us. Dad flinched like she'd slapped him. Waverly. She kept going. Eyes locked on me like she wanted me to break. You guys just want me to feel like I'm not a real sibling. You want to punish me because I love Holland. I looked at her and realized something else. She wasn't only angry about the cemetery. She was terrified. Holland leaving meant Waverly's whole sense of family was cracking. And instead of admitting she was scared, she was trying to force us to act like Holland was our mother too. Like that would glue her world back together. But I couldn't do it. Not at the cost of my mom's memory. Not while Waverly spit on it. Dad rubbed his forehead. She's young. She's struggling. You have to leave room. I nodded slowly. Okay. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't list every cruel thing she'd said. I just walked to my room, sat on the bed, and opened the screenshots again. I stared at them until my breathing evened out. Then I heard Waverly's voice down the hall. Louder now. Emotional and sharp. I hate how they act like she was some saint. Holland did everything. If Holland leaves, I'm not going to let them pretend I'm not part of this family. And Dad, in a voice that sounded broken, said, you don't understand what you're doing. That night I couldn't sleep. The house felt unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone else. Around midnight, I got up for water and saw Dad's office door slightly open. A sliver of light from the hallway fell across his desk. Something was sitting there that hadn't been there before. A thick envelope. My mother's name was written on the front in my dad's handwriting. My stomach flipped. My hands started shaking because I suddenly knew with a kind of sick certainty that whatever was inside that envelope was the real reason Waverly was so angry. And it had nothing to do with Mother's Day at all. Quick real life pause. When I'm editing these late at night, I get tired, and your comments are what keep me going. Like, subscribe and tell me your city, state, or country. All right, back to the story. I stepped into the office, silent as a shadow, and I reached for the envelope with my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might expose me all by itself. I slid the envelope toward me like it might bite. My dad's handwriting was unmistakable, heavy and careful, the way he writes when something matters. I stared at my mother's name until my vision blurred, then I lifted the flap with a fingernail and pulled out what was inside. It was not one letter, it was several. A thin stack of sealed envelopes, each one labeled with a name. Rhodes, Grant, mine, and one more that made my throat close. Waverly. My pulse turned loud in my ears. The office felt smaller, like the walls leaned in. I should have put everything back. I should have walked away. But grief makes you reckless, and curiosity makes you braver than you deserve to be. Held my own envelope for a moment, feeling the weight of it like it contained a piece of her voice. Then I noticed something else tucked underneath. A folded document with an attorney's letterhead. I did not read everything, not yet. I only saw enough to understand one thing. My mother had prepared for death. She had written to all of us, including the sister who never met her. My hands shook so hard I had to set the papers down. I stood there breathing through my mouth like I had just run up a flight of stairs. My mom had been gone most of my life, and yet here she was, reaching across time with ink and paper, still trying to mother us from the dark. Behind me, a floorboard creaked. I froze. Dad's voice came from the hallway, low and tired. Serafina? I turned slowly, still holding the edge of the envelope like it was a confession. He stood in the doorway in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, hair a mess, eyes hollow. For a second, he looked like the man he was right after Mom died, a man who forgot how to exist. He didn't ask what I was doing. He already knew. His gaze dropped to the stack. The smallest flinch crossed his face like he'd been punched. I didn't mean to, I whispered, because I suddenly felt like I had broken into a grave. Dad stepped inside and closed the door behind him gently, as if the house itself was asleep and we shouldn't wake it. You weren't supposed to see that tonight, he said. Was I supposed to see it ever? My voice came out sharper than I intended. I swallowed. You kept this in your desk all this time. Dad looked down at the envelopes and rubbed his thumb against his palm, a nervous habit he never lost. I kept it because I didn't know when was the right time. Every time I thought I should give you those letters, something happened. School, grief, life, Holland, the adoption, the arguing. I kept thinking, not yet, not yet, not yet. And Waverly? I asked, my stomach twisting. She has one too. Dad's jaw tightened. Yes. I stared at the envelope with her name. Then why does she act like Mom meant nothing? Why does she talk like she was replaced? Dad let out a slow breath. Because she is terrified. I shook my head. That doesn't excuse what she says. No. Dad agreed quietly. It doesn't, but it explains the storm. She has been clinging to Holland like a life raft. If Holland leaves for good, Waverly feels like she loses her mother twice. Even though she never met your mom, she still lost the idea of her. Then she built her whole world around Holland. Now that world is cracking. I wanted to believe that. I wanted it to be that simple, but something inside me did not settle. Why didn't you tell her about this letter? I asked. Dad's eyes flicked to the desk and back to me. I tried once. My breath caught. When? He hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything before he even spoke. A while back, he said carefully. During one of her blow-ups, I told her your mother wrote something for her. I thought it might soften her. I thought it might make her curious, maybe even grateful. And I whispered. Dad's face tightened with old regret. She said she didn't want it. She said she did not want anything from a woman who abandoned her. My vision swam. My voice came out thin. She said that? Dad nodded once. She was younger then. Still old enough to understand, but younger. Holland heard it. That was the first time Holland and I fought about your mom in a serious way. I stared at the desk, at my mother's handwriting, at the sealed paper that had survived all these years, while people's hearts did not. She rejected it, I said, more to myself than him. She did, Dad answered. But I kept it anyway, because your mother still wrote it, and I could not bring myself to destroy it. I picked up my own envelope again. I wanted to rip it open right there, right in front of him, like a starving person tearing into food. But I didn't. Something told me if I read it now, in this moment, I would fall apart in a way I could not hide. Dad stepped closer. Put it back, okay? Please. We will do this the right way. We will set a time, all of us, and we will read them together. All of us? Yes? I repeated, my chest tightening. Dad's eyes held mine. Yes, Waverly too. I felt anger rise hot and clean. So she can spit on mom again? So she can rip hers up and laugh about it? Dad's shoulders sagged. Serafina, she is still your sister. I looked at him and realized he was begging. Not for Waverly. For the family he keeps trying to glue together with his bare hands. I nodded slowly. Okay. I did not mean it the way he thought I did, but I said it anyway. Dad watched me carefully as I slid every envelope back into the larger one and tucked the attorney document underneath. My hands were steadier now, but my heart was not. When everything was back in place, Dad nodded like he had survived something. He touched my shoulder briefly, then left the office without another word. I stood alone in the quiet, staring at the closed drawer. And that was when I understood my first silent revenge move. Waverly had been telling her story to everyone. On social media, in the house, in her tone, in the way she framed every conflict as if we were villains, and she was the wounded hero. But she had never shown what she said first. She had never shown the part where she used our mother's death as a weapon. I had the proof now. Screenshots, timestamps, words she could not deny. I did not want to destroy her. I wanted to protect my mom's memory, and I wanted to protect myself from being rewritten into a monster. So I made a decision. I would stop arguing. I would stop trying to convince her. I would let her talk. And I would only step in when it mattered, with something solid in my hand. The next morning, the house felt tense, like a string pulled too tight. Dad went to work early. Waverly stayed home from school claiming a stomachache, which meant she was on the couch with a blanket and her phone, watching videos and refreshing her own story views like they were oxygen. I walked into the kitchen to make coffee, and she looked up with red-rimmed eyes. For a second, she looked like a little girl again, then her mouth twisted. So you had fun visiting your dead lady, she said. I set the mug down gently. Good morning to you too, she snorted. Don't do that fake calm thing. You think you're better than me? I kept my voice even. I think I'm tired. Of what? She shot back. Of me being honest. The word honest landed wrong, like someone calling poison medicine. I leaned against the counter and watched her carefully. Do you actually believe what you said in the group chat? Waverly's eyes narrowed. Which part? The part where you called my mom a dead woman who got replaced. I said calmly, like I was reading a weather report. Her face flushed. I was mad. Mad at who? I asked. She hesitated. Just a flicker. At all of you. Because we did not invite you? Because you never choose us, she snapped. You never choose Holland. You never chose me. The last word came out smaller, and there it was. The real wound. Not mom versus Holland. Not Mother's Day. Not the cemetery. Me, us. Waverly sat up straighter, suddenly defensive again. You three act like I'm a mistake that happened after she died. That hit me harder than I expected. I felt shame slide into my chest, cold and heavy, because the truth was, part of me had been looking at her like she was living proof that my mom's last days were chaos. A newborn, a funeral, a house full of children crying. Waverly had been the beginning of the end, but that was not her fault. I exhaled slowly. I don't think you're a mistake. You treat me like one, she snapped. I treat you like someone who keeps trying to hurt me, I said quietly. Waverly's eyes flashed. Maybe you deserve it. I nodded once like I was accepting a fact. Okay. That one word seemed to throw her off. She expected a fight. She wanted me to raise my voice so she could point and say, see, she hates me. Instead, I took my coffee and walked out. Behind me, she yelled, that's right. Run away. You always run away. I did not run away. I just refused to hand her the scene she wanted. That afternoon, Rhodes called me. His voice was tight. Did Dad talk to you last night? Yes, I said. Rhodes was silent for a beat. About the letters, I swallowed. Yes. Grant thinks Dad is finally going to give them to us, Rhodes said. But Waverly is already spinning it. She posted again. She said we are excluding her because she does not worship a dead woman. My jaw clenched. I saw Rhodes's voice softened. Are you okay? I looked out the window at the dull winter sky. No, but I will be. Rhodes exhaled. Grant wants to confront her. He wants to show her screenshots, put her on the spot. Do not, I said immediately. Rhodes paused. Why? Because if we exposed her now, she would only learn to hide better. Because she would cry to Dad and Dad would say she is young. Because Holland would hear it and it would become another war. Because Waverly would become a victim again and my mom would still be the one getting dragged through the mud. I kept my voice calm because it will not work. Not like that. Rhodes sounded frustrated. So what? We just take it? No, I said. We wait. We keep our proof and we pick the right moment. Rhodes went quiet. Then he said, you sound like you have a plan. I do, I answered. But it is not about punishing her. It is about protecting Mom. That evening, Dad announced at dinner that we were going to read something together the next weekend. He did not say what, but Waverly's eyes sharpened immediately, like she sensed a shift in the air. What kind of something? She asked. Dad's fork paused midair. Family stuff. Waverly stared at him. Is Holland coming? Dad's face tightened. No. Waverly's expression hardened. So it is about her, about the dead woman. Dad's voice turned firm. Waverly, enough. She leaned back, lips curling. I knew it. I knew you were planning another dead woman celebration. I stayed quiet. Rhodes stayed quiet. Grant's hand tightened on his glass. The table felt like it was holding its breath. Dad said, it is important, and you will be there. Waverly's gaze snapped to me. What is it, Serafina? Another secret group thing? Another way to tell me I do not belong? I looked at her calmly and said, you will be there. That was all. Waverly narrowed her eyes like she was trying to read my face for clues. For a moment, she looked unsettled. Then she scoffed and pushed away from the table. As she stormed off, I caught one more thing. The way her eyes flicked toward Dad's office door. Not curiosity, fear. Later that night, I walked past the office and noticed the door was not fully latched. I stopped, listening. Silence. I reached out and pushed it open. The desk drawer was slightly open, just a hair, like someone had pulled it and closed it too fast. My stomach dropped. I stepped inside and opened the drawer fully. The envelope was still there, but it was not the same. One of the smaller envelopes was missing, the one labeled Waverly. My lungs went tight. I stood there staring at the empty space like it was a wound. Then I heard a soft sound in the hallway. A quick retreating step. I turned fast, and I caught a glimpse of Waverly's hair disappearing around the corner, moving like she had been running on purpose, like she had stolen something she was not ready to face. I did not chase her. I did not call her name. I just stood there, heart pounding, and I realized the next twist. Waverly did not hate our mom because she did not know her. Waverly hated our mom because she was afraid of what our mom might have said. I stood there for a long time, staring at the open drawer, letting the anger roll through me in slow waves. It would have been so easy to march down the hall and demand the letter back. It would have been satisfying to slam her door and force her to face what she stole. But I knew Waverly. If I cornered her, she would become sharp and loud, and the moment would turn into another fight where my mom was a prop and Waverly was the wounded hero. I could already hear her saying she only took it because we were keeping secrets. I could already see Dad stepping between us, begging for calm, choosing choosing peace over truth because he was exhausted. So I did the hardest thing. I did nothing. Not because I was weak, because I was finally learning how to be strategic. I closed the drawer gently, the way you close a coffin when you cannot bear the sound, and I walked back to my room. My heart was pounding, but my face stayed calm. In the mirror above my dresser, I looked like a woman who had everything under control. Inside, I felt like a house with one wall missing, wind rushing through. The next morning, Waverly came down with her hair messy and her eyes swollen like she had cried. She avoided looking at Rhodes and Grant. She avoided looking at me most of all. Dad tried to act normal. He made eggs nobody wanted. He asked about school. He talked about work. Every word sounded forced, like he was reading a script he hated. Waverly barely touched her plate. Her fingers kept tapping the table, restless, like the letter was burning a hole through her pocket even if it was upstairs, hidden under her mattress. Grant's voice broke the fake calm. "We are doing the family thing this weekend, right?" Dad nodded. "Yes." Waverly flinched and stared down at her plate. Rhodes leaned back in his chair, eyes on her. "You are coming." Waverly's jaw tightened. "I know." She sounded angry, but her hands shook slightly when she lifted her glass. Not rage, fear. When she stood to leave, she finally looked at me, just a quick glance. There was something in it I had never seen before. Not defiance, not smugness. It looked like shame trying to pretend it was hatred. I waited until she was out of the room. Then I stood and followed Dad into the hallway. "Dad," I said quietly. He turned, already tired. "Not now, please." "I know," I said. "But you need to lock the office." His face tightened. "Why?" I held his gaze. "Because the letter to Waverly is gone." For a second, he looked like he did not understand the words. Then his shoulders sank like someone had placed a heavy box on his back. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Oh God." I kept my voice calm. "I did not take it." "I know you didn't," he said quickly. Then he swallowed hard. "I should have known. I should have protected it better." "You did," I said. "But she wanted it." Dad's eyes opened, glossy with exhaustion. "If she read it alone, it could go either way." I nodded. "Then we make sure it goes the right way." Quietly. Dad looked at me like he was trying to understand what I meant, but he did not have the energy to ask. He just nodded and walked away, rubbing his forehead like it hurt. That week felt like living inside a storm cloud. Waverly stopped making cruel comments, not because she suddenly became kind, because she was holding something private, something that had shifted the ground under her feet. Rhodes and Grant kept texting me, furious, asking what we should do. Grant wanted to force the letter back. Rhodes wanted to confront her and tell her she had no right. I told them both the same thing. Let her sit with it. Let her feel it. Let her realize she cannot outrun words that were written before she even learned how to speak. The day of the family meeting, Dad asked all of us to sit in the living room. The air smelled like coffee and nerves. He had the envelope from the office in his hands. I noticed his fingers were gripping it too tight, like he was afraid it might disappear again. Waverly sat in the corner of the couch with her arms wrapped around herself. She looked smaller than usual. Her eyes were red, but her face was set in a stubborn line. Dad cleared his throat. "Your mother wrote letters," he said, "for each of you. She knew she might not make it. She wanted you to have her words when you were older." Rhodes stared at the envelope like it was a ghost. Grant's jaw clenched hard. My chest felt tight in a way I could not explain. I had spent most of my life missing a person I barely remembered, and now she was about to speak again. Dad handed Rhodes his envelope first, then Grant, then me. When he reached for Waverly's, his hand stopped. His face changed, the smallest twitch of pain. Waverly's chin lifted. "It's not there," she said quickly. Dad's voice was careful. "Why?" Silence filled the room, thick and heavy. Waverly's eyes flicked toward me, then away. "Because I took it." Rhodes's voice snapped. "Are you kidding me?" Grant leaned forward, anger flashing. "You stole it." "I did not steal it," Waverly shot back, and her voice cracked. "It was mine." Dad's tone stayed steady, but there was steel in it. "It was in my desk for a reason. You went into my office. You took something you were not allowed to take." Waverly's breathing got fast. She looked like she was trying to hold herself together with pure stubbornness. "You were keeping it from me." "No," Dad said. "I was trying to give it to you the right way." Waverly swallowed and her eyes shined. "I didn't want the right way. I wanted to know what she said." The room went quiet again. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, like it was the only thing in the house still alive. Dad's voice softened. "Did you read it?" Waverly hesitated, then nodded once. Rhodes stared at her. "And you still said those things about her? After reading a letter from her?" Waverly flinched like he slapped her. I spoke, finally calm and quiet. "What did the letter say?" Waverly's eyes snapped to me, panicked, like she did not want to give me the power of hearing it out loud. Dad held out his hand. "Bring it." Waverly shook her head. "No." Dad's voice hardened. "Waverly." Her face twisted. Anger, shame, fear, all tangled together. "You don't get to order me around when you can't even keep a family together," she snapped. Dad went still. "That one hit him. I saw it land like a bruise." Waverly's breath shook. She looked like she wanted to run, but there was nowhere to run inside your own house. Rhodes's voice dropped, controlled. "If the letter was cruel, say that. If the letter was loving, say that. But stop hiding behind this fake anger." Waverly's eyes filled fast. She blinked hard like she hated herself for crying. "It wasn't cruel," she whispered. My throat tightened. I said nothing. Waverly rubbed her face hard. It was nice." Grant's anger faltered for the first time. "Nice how?" Waverly's voice got smaller. "She said she was sorry she couldn't stay. She said she loved me even though she didn't get to hold me. She called me her miracle." The word miracle hit me like a punch. I had spent years watching Waverly act like mom was nothing, and now sitting in front of us, she looked like a kid who had just discovered she was loved by someone she'd been trained to hate. Waverly kept going, voice trembling. She wrote that she hoped I would never feel like an afterthought. She wrote that she hoped my brothers and sister would protect me. She wrote that if another woman loved me too, then I should let myself be loved, because love is not a betrayal. Rhodes's eyes shined. Grant's expression cracked in a way I had never seen. Dad covered his mouth with his hand, swallowing a sound that almost became a sob. Waverly's shoulders shook. She whispered, "I didn't want it to be true." I leaned forward slightly. "Why not?" Waverly's eyes squeezed shut. "Because if she loved me, then what I've been saying makes me disgusting." There it was. Not just grief, not just loyalty to Holland, guilt. Waverly wiped her face quickly, furious at her own tears. "I thought she would hate me. I thought she would write something cold. Because Holland used to say your mom would have wanted only you three, not me. She would say it when she was upset. Like when I called her mom in front of your grandma and your grandma got quiet. Holland would say your real mom didn't choose you, I did." Dad's head snapped up. "She said that to you?" Waverly flinched. "Not all the time. Just when she was mad. Just when she felt like she wasn't good enough. But it got stuck in my head. And then when you three acted like Holland wasn't your mom, it made me feel like I had to fight for her. Like if I didn't, I would have nobody." Rhodes sat back, stunned. Grant's hands clenched into fists, but this time it wasn't anger at Waverly. It was anger at the adults who let a child carry that kind of poison. Dad's voice was low, shaken. "That was wrong of her." Waverly nodded, tears spilling again. "So I made myself believe the opposite. That your mom didn't matter. That she was replaceable. Because if she was replaceable, then then it didn't hurt that she was gone. And if she was replaceable, then Holland being my mom didn't feel like stealing. I felt my chest ache, a deep, painful empathy mixing with the old anger. I did not excuse what she said, but I finally understood the twisted logic behind it. Waverly looked at me, raw and terrified. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry for what I said. I didn't know how to stop once I started." Grant let out a breath through his nose, like he was forcing himself not to explode. "You don't get to say sorry and think it erases it." "I know," Waverly whispered. Rhodes looked at Dad. "So what now?" Dad's voice was steadier, like the truth gave him something to stand on. "Now we do this the right way. We read the letters, and Waverly gives me the one she took. And we get help. Real help, therapy, for all of us if we have to." Waverly nodded quickly. "I'll get it. I'll bring it." She stood and went upstairs, and nobody stopped her. We all listened to her footsteps like they were a countdown. While she was gone, Grant looked at me. "You knew she took it." I nodded. "And you didn't say anything." "I did," I said. To Dad, quietly. Rhodes stared at me, realization dawning. "You're the one who told him to lock the office." I kept my voice calm. "Yes," Grant exhaled, and the anger in his face softened into something like respect. "You kept your head." I did not tell them about the screenshots. Not yet. Not because I wanted to weaponize them, but because I wanted to use them only if Waverly tried to rewrite this again. Waverly came back down holding the letter. The envelope was wrinkled. The seal was broken. Her fingers were shaking. She handed it to Dad like it was sacred. Dad took it carefully, then looked at her. "You are grounded," he said quietly. "Not because you read it, because you stole it. And because the things you said hurt people, but I'm not grounding you into silence. You will talk to someone, you will face this." Waverly nodded, swallowing hard. "Okay." Rhodes opened his envelope with trembling hands. Grant did too. I opened mine last. The paper inside smelled faintly like old books, like time. I won't pretend it healed me instantly, but it did something to me. It made my mother real again. Not a ghost, not a symbol. A woman who knew she was leaving and still tried to leave. Love behind like breadcrumbs. After we finished reading, Dad stood and said, "Tomorrow, we go together. To her grave. All of us." Waverly flinched. "Me too?" Dad's voice was firm. "Yes, you are part of this family, and you are part of her story, whether you like it or not." The next day, the cemetery was cold and quiet. The sky looked pale, like it was trying to be gentle. Waverly walked slower than the rest of us, hands shoved in her pockets, eyes fixed on the ground. When we reached the stone, she stopped like she had hit an invisible wall. Rhodes placed fresh flowers down. Grant stood with his shoulders tight, but he did not turn away from her. Waverly stared at the name carved into the stone. Her mouth trembled. "I'm sorry," she whispered. And this time she said it to the grave, not to us. She pulled something from her pocket, a small locket. It looked old but polished, like she had rubbed it clean with her thumb over and over. She opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a tiny photo. A woman's smile captured in a moment that felt too alive to belong in a cemetery. Waverly's voice broke. "She left this for me," she whispered. Dad nodded, eyes wet. "She did." Waverly looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, there was no challenge in her eyes, only honesty. "I didn't want to be jealous of someone who died," she said. "But I was, and it made me mean." I took a slow breath. "You don't have to love her the way we do," I said. "But you don't get to disrespect her. Not anymore." Waverly nodded quickly. "I won't." Grant stepped closer, hesitated, then placed his hand lightly on her shoulder. It was awkward. It was imperfect, but it was something. And in that moment, I decided my silent revenge was complete. Not because I had punished Waverly, because I had protected the truth long enough for it to reveal itself. That night, Waverly deleted the social media post. Then she posted one new line, simple and plain. She wrote that she was sorry for the cruel things she said about our mother, and that some grief looks like anger until you finally name it. People messaged her. Some were kind, some were harsh. She did not argue. She just let it sit there. A public accountability she chose for herself. I never posted the screenshots. I never had to. Weeks later, Dad told us he and Holland were finalizing the divorce. Waverly cried, but she did not weaponize it anymore. She started therapy. She stopped trying to force us to call Holland Mom. She stopped treating my mother like an opponent. And on the next birthday, when Rhodes texted the group chat about our plan, Waverly replied first. "I want to come," she wrote. "I want to bring flowers. I will be respectful." We went together. We stood as 4 siblings. Not perfect, not healed, but honest. When Waverly set her flowers down, she touched the stone and whispered, "You loved me before I ever had words, and I'm done pretending I didn't need that." After the story, let me step out for a second and talk like a real person. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in a family is not hatred. It's fear wearing hatred like a mask. When people feel like love is scarce, they start competing for it. They start rewriting history. They start testing boundaries just to see if anyone will still stay. And if you grew up around grief, you learn something early. Loud fights feel powerful in the moment, but they rarely fix anything. Quiet proof does. Quiet boundaries do. Silence can be a weapon, but it can also be protection. Sometimes the smartest thing you can say is okay, and then you let the truth do the talking later. I also learned that forgiveness does not mean pretending it didn't hurt. It means naming the hurt, setting the rules, and still leaving a door open for someone to grow. Not because they deserve a free pass, because you deserve peace. And if someone is trying to rewrite you into the villain, don't panic. Don't scream. Save the truth. Hold it steady. Use it only when it matters. That is how you keep your dignity intact. The day I watched a kid apologize to a grave, I realized something simple. Love doesn't get replaced. It just finds new shapes. And if someone tries to turn your grief into a battlefield, you don't have to fight to win. You just have to refuse to lie.